Hey, I'm Allie Olson Jensen, and I come from a few generations of sheepmen. I'm really proud of where I come from, and I would love to see the sheep industry keep going in the future. When I went to the California Ram Sale this year, I had the opportunity to visit with Wes Patton. Wes is a rancher, was a college professor, and has been heavily involved in the sheep industry throughout various organizations. I was able to learn a lot from him about the history of the California Wool Growers Association and the California Ram Sale. In this episode, we discuss the future of the sheep industry and how it's changed throughout the years. I want to thank Wes for taking the time to discuss these topics with me and for being willing to do this podcast. How did you end up in the sheep industry?
Well, I was basically born into the sheep industry. I lived on a small ranch in Northern California. My father worked for the ranch that he grew up on next door. And so when I was 5 years old, he came home from a marking one day with 5 little orphan lambs that got left behind because their moms took off and left them back when they turned them out. And it was my first start of officially owning sheep. I'd been around them from the time I was born, but that was how I got started with the sheep business. And so I had my 5 mummer lambs, and it was my responsibility to feed them every day and take care of them, and kind of grew from that. That was over basically toward the coast of California, and consequently they were a Romney-based sheep, so they were coarse wool. And so we went a little bit down the road with those, and we ate some of them, and I sold some of them and started my little cash flow that way. And then a little bit after that, my parents had some registered Corriedale sheep, and so I got interested in the Corriedales. And that actually was my beginning in the purebred sheep business. And when I was in high school, then I campaigned those at county fairs and so on, and was able to sell wool and sell sheep from that. So that was kind of my start.
So do you have sheep still today at your house?
I do.
Okay.
And
how many do you run now?
Well, I don't have very many anymore.
Okay.
I only have about 130 ewes. And the breed of sheep has changed tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gone to white Dorper and Dorper sheep.
Okay.
In the idea that we needed a more easy care sheep than the traditional kind of sheep were. And that seemed to work well in the situation I'm in. Over years, my wife and I probably had 8 or 10 different breeds of sheep. So we had a pretty good idea of the plus and minus of each of those.
Yeah.
And we found that the Dorper was a very easy care sheep, and it came at about the right time because the consumption of lamb was not good, but we found that many people like the meat from Dorper sheep because it's a milder flavored, and most people don't like lamb because it tastes like lamb.
Yep.
And these don't necessarily taste that strong.
Okay.
For a traditional lamb eater, they don't like them because they're too mild. But for those that don't know about lamb and are afraid to try it, they find that works out better for them because they can learn to like lamb that way.
Yeah.
Growing up, I think we always ate mutton because the lambs are too valuable. We had to sell those for the family income.
Yep.
And so we ate the ones that were on the other end of their life cycle.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of get attuned to that taste.
Yeah.
And if it's someone straight off the street that's never eaten lamb before, it's a whole different story.
It's true. Yeah, you get used to what you grow up having. So, so you've been in the industry since you were 5. What kind of changes have you noticed over the years?
Well, there've been quite a few changes for me personally, and also I think as far as the industry is concerned. When I was a child, in the early 50s, my father sold wool for $1.03 a pound. And if you look at today's market, In some cases, we're lucky to get that much
Mhm.
for some of the wool that's being produced.
Yeah.
And you think of the changes as far as income and expense and everything since then, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Back then, he was actually shearing sheep on the side to make a profit for the family. And interestingly enough, he was shearing sheep for 24.5 cents a sheep, not 25 cents, but 24.5 cents. So they were pretty meager in those days as far as the income and expenses were concerned.
Yeah. And he was able to raise a family.
Raise a
Doing
family
that.
of three, and of course they had a mixed farm, so they
Yeah.
had hogs and cattle and sheep and chickens and turkeys, and then he worked on a bigger ranch off the farm also.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool.
So,
Like, I think my dad said today, he was just talking the other day, and it was $16 a head to shear his bucks.
yes. Well, I think it's been very rewarding to be in the sheep industry, and I've tried to contribute along the way as much as I could. So I got involved in the California Wool Growers Association because of that. I did that for two reasons. First of all, I was very interested in the industry. My family had been in it forever. And in addition to that, I was a professor at Chico State, and that made me able to be in contact with the industry and know what was going on in the industry all along, and I could take that information to the classroom.
Yeah. And that's important. I mean, they have firsthand perspective right there.
Exactly.
Which is great because a lot of people don't have that. So,
right.
What does your operation look like now compared to back when you were a kid?
Oh, back when I was a kid, yeah, we actually lived on a pretty dry area of Humboldt County at the time when I was a kid. And my parents wanted to move somewhere where they had irrigation. And so there was a big switch there. So we went from dryland grass or seasonal grass to irrigated pasture. And so that was a big change.
Mm-hmm.
And as time has gone on now, I am on an irrigated pasture operation. And so the management of that is certainly a lot different than it was back in the hills. And, we deal with all of the things that go along with irrigated pasture. How much does the water cost? Are you going to have any water this year? All of those things go into it. And how do you regulate the number of livestock in order to make use of the feed? How do you regulate them so you don't have too many for the feed that you do have? All of those things go into that. And then, of course, the whole industry has changed a lot since then also. As we talked about a little bit before, wool used to be a prime thing, and we've shifted to lamb being the more prime thing. And those that are still with wool, if they have developed a niche for marketing it, they're doing okay. But those that are paying as much as you indicated to get the wool off the sheep are trading dollars at best in some cases.
Yeah.
And as the world economy changes, as the whole world changes, and our relationship in the world changes, then it makes it more difficult to sell the wool part. And also, we have to compete on the lamb market as well.
Yeah. A lot. So we went to Wool Growers the other night, and they said that that's one of the only places that has domestic lamb.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, that's kind of across the board, really, isn't it? Everything's imported.
Well, I think like 70% of the lamb consumed in the nation right now is imported.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's just crazy to me that it's right here, but we can't figure out how to just do it locally.
And I had an opportunity to spend 6 years on the American Lamb Board, which was, I think, something that everyone that's in sheep production would really benefit from doing if they possibly could, because you got a whole different look at the industry from that perspective. And that organization is not political. They can't do anything political. They are promotion of the product. And so we looked at various ways of increasing lamb consumption. And your checkoff dollars go into funding that. And it's a small amount of money that is generated from that. So per capita, it's something like 3 cents per person per year to promote lamb. And there's probably $7 per year devoted to getting you to drink soft drinks per year. So put that into perspective, you know, it's a big difference. And how much can you do with that 3 cents compared to someone that's really got a lot of money behind them to do that? And that's true with the sheep industry versus the beef industry, for example, or the poultry or the pork industry. We have a lot less dollars to do the product promotion. And I think that the American Lamb Board was doing a terrific job with the small funds that they had in order to do that. And there were some really interesting things that went on there. And one of them was to get more people to try lamb. There was, at the time I was doing it, the idea of a supper club had come about. And that was kind of like a book club where, you know, you're going to read this book. And so you learn a little bit about the book, and then you read a chapter, and then you get together and discuss the chapter. Well, they were doing this with the dinner club. And so if you could get lamb into the dinner club, then they would, everybody that got together for dinner would bring parts and pieces of it, but the lamb was the center part of that. And they would talk about how to get it, how to cook it. And then as they were eating it, they would talk about how it tasted and what they were going to do from there. And it really got into the millennial crowd. And because that became very popular at that time to do those kinds of things. And instead of just a meal, it was an experience. And I think that that was really good as far as the consumption of lamb by different people than had been doing it before. You know, I jokingly categorized the lamb consumers in 3 ways. One was the millennials, which were now into new foods and exploring new things, and that was good. One was the ethnic group, which is a tremendous part of consumption. I think over 50% of the lamb consumed in the country is consumed by by ethnic groups. And the other one was what I call the chronologically challenged consumer, which is those of us that have this white stuff on top of our head. And I indicated that we better spend more time on those first 2 and satisfy this last one, but let's not bank the farm on that one coming through for us because it's going the other direction.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things that we did on one of our outings is that we went to Detroit, Michigan.
Oh.
And the largest Muslim population in the country is in Detroit.
Okay.
And one of our growers was actually selling lamb to the people that are supplying it to that population there. And so he actually worked us into some of the shops and plants that we wouldn't have been able to get into otherwise. And that was really an eye-opener to me.
Yeah.
The type of lamb that they want, the type of sheep that they want, much leaner than the traditional, and the cuts and the way they prepare it much different than the traditional lamb consumer would have. And you know, they have to adhere to their customs as well, and so that was also a very important part of that. But as near as we could tell at the time, they consume about 5,000 lamb or sheep in the Detroit region a week.
A week. Wow.
And so where do those all come from?
Yeah.
And how do they get there? And how do they make that all work? Now, those numbers may have changed since then, but the fact is that is a tremendous opportunity
Yeah.
as far as, and I found long ago that we have to be careful and try to satisfy the needs of the customer.
Yeah.
So if this customer has this need and this one has this need, you can't say, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to go down the middle. Well, you're not going to be successful. You've got to cater to the customer. And I think that being on that board was really an eye opener to me as far as how the marketing of lamb could be done.
Yeah. Wow. Now we just need that boost to get it done. But
right.
Yeah. Are there any other stories you want to talk about your time as a professor? How you've seen the ag industry change over the years, because it's changed a lot, I'm sure.
It has changed a lot, and first of all, I could not have designed a more perfect career than I had as an ag educator. I was at the university level, and I could go to the classroom every day and get recharged by the youth in my classroom. And that was really beneficial. And I always had a ranch on the side. And consequently, I could go to the classroom every day with a real life experience. And some days it was a real bad experience, and some days a real good one, but nonetheless a real one. And I think the students appreciated that very much. And I bump into them around the country all the time. Actually, here at the California Ram Sale, there's a couple here that were my students, and they dig up old stories about me that took place during that time. But that was really a rewarding kind of a career to have. Now, did it change? Yes, it changed over time. Back at the beginning, I was getting a lot of ranch kids, a lot of farm kids that had some idea of the industry that they wanted to go into. And as time went on, there were less and less of those, and more people that were kind of interested, but they didn't know about it. And so then you had to tailor the delivery to capture them. And that was kind of my challenge as far as a professor was concerned. How do I get to this person without leaving this one behind, and without overlooking the one that actually had something to offer? And I think that was the biggest challenge that I had. And I had a fair management class at the time, and I was having the opportunity to train fair managers. And we would have events at the university farm. And one year we put on 31 events at the university farm during the academic year. And I would have students in my class bid on being chairman of this event or that event. If it was sheep day, or if it was a 4-H judging day, or an FFA field day, they would bid on doing those. And then I put the teams together to do that. And my key for that was to put the students that knew how to work at the chairman of a team. And then they could help those that were interested but didn't know how to work, help them be developed into someone that was useful. And that really worked well. And I never had a failure in all of those events that we put on. If I asked them to do it, they did it. And they did it as good as they possibly could. And so that was one of the challenges that I had. And I think a benefit to the students, because those students that came in that were interested but didn't know how to work, and it's unbelievable how many young people don't know how to work, they were able to develop that skill while they were in that class. And so that was some of what was going on through the time I was teaching. The other thing, I think, near the end of my teaching career, the aids that you had for teaching changed a lot. And my style of teaching probably would not work today because I used a discovery kind of delivery. And that is, I would introduce this topic, and then they had to listen really careful to get the points of that. Now they get the syllabus and the course before the class starts. And if they decide to come to class, that's good, but they don't necessarily have to get those key points because they get them before the class starts. And I don't think I'd be very effective then under that condition.
How did the California ram sale get started?
Well, first of all, I think we have to say, how did the California Wool Growers Association get started?
True.
And the California Wool Growers Association started 164 years ago. They started in 1860. And they started because they needed to go to San Francisco and get a ship to take their wool around the Horn to Boston, because that's where the woolen mills were. And that's where the market for their wool was. And wool was king at that time. That was a big thing. And you could not go cross country at that time with the wool. So you had to put it on a ship and go around the Horn to get back to Boston. And so that organization started then. And, you know, our forefathers were pretty good thinkers. They had this figured out. And 104 years ago, they started the California ram sale. And they started that because there was a definite need for high quality rams, and lots of them at the time, because there were a lot of sheep in the country at the time, in the state at the time. And they also needed replacement ewes. And so these were events that took 2 or 3 or more days to accomplish. And we're talking thousands of rams and more thousands of ewes that went through these sales at that time. It's kind of interesting to go back and see the things that affected the sale and the prices that they averaged, which was kind of interesting. I recall one back in the earlier days that I read about that, the sales were really up this year. They averaged $56 a head on the rams, you know, but a dollar was a dollar those days, and so everything's in perspective. So the ram sale got started way back, and the earliest one that I found anything about was they held the sale in Galt, California for a few years. And then it moved to the old state fairgrounds in Sacramento, the California State Fair. And that was the first one that I ever went to, was at the California State Fairgrounds. And then when they basically tore down the state fairgrounds, they moved it to Stockton for a few years. And then from Stockton, they moved it back to the new Cal Expo, the state fairgrounds that we now know of in Sacramento. And from there, it went down to Hanford for a while. And then it went to the Tulare Fairgrounds for a while. And from the Tulare Fairgrounds, then we moved it to the Porterville Fairgrounds for a while. And in more recent years, we made a contract here at the International Ag Center in Tulare to put the sale on here. But last year, we weren't able to do that because the state commandeered the grounds as a flood control center for the state of California because of all the rain that we'd had and the fact that the Tulare Lake was going to be reappear after all those years, and that there were going to be floods everywhere, and they needed to have a command center, so they wouldn't let us come here. So last year we went to the Bakersfield Fairgrounds, and that was very successful to have it there. I have a contract here at the International Ag Center, so we came back here again this year. And so where we go in the future, I'm not sure where we'll go from here, but that's kind of a running history of where it's been and what took place and why.
We could talk about how it's changed over the years. You kind of talked about the price a little bit and the consigners, like how many consigners did they have towards, you know, however many years ago compared to now?
Yeah, I wished I knew the answer to that, particularly in the very early days when they got the sale started. I jokingly say that I missed the first few of those, but uh, there were lots of consigners at the time, lots of sheep, and the numbers of sheep that came in. Now we have big lots of 5 rams per pen. In those days, way back when, they had lots of 15 or 20 or more that they sold at a lot. And so that part has changed because the need for the number has changed over the years. So those are some of the things that have changed. We used to have quite a few ewes in the sale. We offered some ewes in the sale. And then we found that there were other sales that were going on where people were getting their ewes, and so they lost interest in that. So we discontinued that for a while. And this year, interestingly enough, we have some ewes in the sale again. Not very many, but we have a few, and there's been a lot of interest in the barn about those ewes. It'd be interesting to see tomorrow exactly how well they sell.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I would like to bring back if we possibly can to get that back.
Yeah.
And so over the years, the numbers have dropped somewhat because the ewe numbers have dropped in the state, and so we don't need as many rams and replacement ewes as we used to. But it's still a vital part, and California is still number 2 as far as total sheep numbers in the nation are concerned, behind Texas. And so you talk to someone from out of state about that, and they think that we're all freeways and palm trees, and where would you put a sheep? But they haven't been to Bakersfield, California, because that's where the majority of our sheep are.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Do you have any memories from the ram sale that you want to share?
Oh, the memories from the sale, I think that when I first was asked to take over the management of the sale or help with the management of the sale, that was kind of a strategic point because the person that had it before I came on board, I had been involved with the sale for a long time, but when I was asked to step up and do that part, the person that had it before was one of my classmates, and he passed away, unfortunately. And so I said, sure, I'm glad to step in and do what I can, as long as I get to work with John Oligary. And that we've teamed up now. And in addition to that, with some of the other people that we've worked with, the executive director of the wool growers, when I first started doing the management, was Lisa Eidman, and now Lisa has moved on to work in Superior Farms. And then we had Erica Sanko, and now we have Susan Taylor. And interestingly enough, Susan and I have been linked before we were born, because my parents bought purebred Cordale sheep from her grandfather and father in 1939. And in addition to that, her son and daughter were students at Chico State while I taught there. And so we're kind of connected. And so the center of the team, the Oligaries and Susan and I work hard, and we have a really terrific committee that operates this, and they work year round. We'll finish the sale on Saturday evening, and we'll start on Sunday planning the next year's sale.
I think, well, I didn't write this down, but I think, I mean, some people don't know what goes in to all of this. And it doesn't, I mean, it takes a small army to get this going.
It really does.
Yeah.
And Susan has been really good in that she has a checklist that's about 3 pages long. And boy, we don't move unless that thing gets checked off. We stop and do it before we move on to the next thing. And so, yeah, there is a lot of planning. And if you just came to the sale for one day and said, oh, okay, that was fun, let's go on, you wouldn't understand all of that. But there is a lot to it that makes it happen.
Yeah.
There's the rental grounds that you have to, the rental of the grounds that you have it at. There's the food that you have to get, the sponsorships that you have to get to make this thing all work. You know, the contact with the consigners, the contact with the buyers. How do we arrange transportation for those that don't have any? You know, all of these things go into it, and of course we have to make sure that we fulfill all of the state requirements as far as health is concerned, as far as these animals are concerned too. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into it.
There is, and just you guys, we all appreciate everything that you do. Like, my dad's the consigner, but just me watching from the background, I can see all the hard work that you guys put into it, and we really appreciate it. You guys keeping this legacy going.
Well, and what I appreciate is if I go over to the barn and say, Matt Olson, I need this done over here, it gets done. Yeah. And so the consigners are a big part of this also. Yeah. And actually we have a couple of the committee members that are consigners as well. Oh. So they've got a vested interest in making sure that all of this works well. Yeah, we want to do everything we can to keep this going. Yeah. What kind of challenges do you feel like we're facing in this industry right now? The sheep industry in California in particular has some challenges. That's no question about that. And I think almost everyone's aware of the overtime laws that have gone in, and the fact that the California Wool Growers Association and members that have H2A herders have been struggling with this now for a while, and expended a lot of producer dollars and industry dollars in order to see if they could make someone use some common sense when it came to how that is done. And this has been a bit discouraging for some. It actually has affected our sheep numbers to some degree, because not everyone is able to comply with the regs that are in place. And looking down the road, in 26, I think it is, we're going to have another look at this, and indicating that it's going to maybe get even worse that way. Now, I know that the people that have put this in place think that they're doing the herders a really good thing. And what they don't understand is that they're probably doing them a lot of damage. Because first of all, and this is just random information, but these herders come in on a 3-year contract, and they have to go home for a while after they finish the first one before they can come back for another. The first one, they typically go home and build a new home for the family, okay? Because they have saved enough in that period of time that they can do that in Peru or wherever it is they came from. The second time, they go home and they put their children through college. Okay, and the third time they go home, they can stay and retire for a lifetime, and they've made more in that period of time than they would in a lifetime in their home country. Now, with the increase in the labor costs here in California, that's going to put some of the people out of business that use H2A herders, and then they are not going to have the wages that they even once had. And the people that thought they were doing them a big favor have really doomed them. And so I would like to think that some of the legislators would see this, understand this, and actually try to do something that would mediate this situation to some degree. So that's one of the big challenges that we have in the state. You know, we have other things because we have fluctuations in temperature, we have fluctuations in water. We've been through 2 droughts here recently. We've had 2 good years now. Everybody's pretty tickled about that because we got green grass and we got the lakes full of water, and that we're excited about. But that doesn't last forever, and we go through these swings of climate that we are not able to have any control over. And so we have to keep working on things that are probably going to be better. One of the really good things I think that we have discovered in California and created in California is a thing we call targeted grazing. And with all of the mismanagement of forests and everything over the last 100 years, we have had some horrible fires. And now we find that, wow, livestock do a great job of reducing that fuel load that causes these fires. And isn't that great? And we can actually pay someone to graze their animals there cheaper than we can remove all of that with mechanical means or chemical means or some other means that are more detrimental to the environment than the livestock are. And so I think there's a real opportunity there. In addition to that, the vineyards can save a lot of money by using sheep to graze at certain times of the year in the vineyards and reduce the hand labor that's involved in operating those. So there's another opportunity. The third one along that line is solar grazing, because there are big solar farms going into California and all over the West. And we find that some of our producers are actually adding animals in order to do the grazing of the solar fields in parts of California. And so those are some real opportunities, I think, that we have here in the state. Is that traditional sheep production? Well, maybe not, but it may be the future of sheep production in order to sustain the industry here that we have.
Yeah, for sure. They can still use the land for two different things.
Right.
That will help keep it going.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any hopes for the future in this industry or agriculture as a whole?
Well, I have some hopes, yes, because I think we've got some opportunities here. You know, I just mentioned three of those as far as the grazing thing is concerned. But the other opportunity I think that we have is to capitalize on the ethnic market for marketing of lamb, because California is a very diverse ethnic population of people. And I can't name one ethnicity that doesn't like lamb or goat or both. And I think that that is a key. And I think we just need to tailor our industry to meet those people's needs. And I think that that can be done. And I think there's a real opportunity in that. Most of the lamb that is consumed in the nation is consumed on the East Coast and the West Coast, and less in the middle of the country. And so we're sitting right in the middle of one of those hot spots. We need to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Jeez. I've learned so much today in this, 30 minutes, 45 minutes we've been sitting here talking. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to tell you thanks for letting me do this. And
sure.
I just hope that I can help in some way to keep this legacy alive and keep things going for the sheep industry, because I told you yesterday, I don't know how much longer we're all going to keep being able to do this. So I'm going to bring my kids around it and expose them to all of this as much as I can, so they can have the memories and hopefully learn how to work a little in the process.
Right.
So
right. That's great. That's great.
Well, thanks, Wes. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairside Chats. If you would like to find more information about the sheep industry, you can visit the following: the California Wool Growers Association at www.californiawoolgrowers.org. That's CALIFORNIAWOOLGROWERS.org, and the American Lamb Board at www.lambboard.com. That's LAMBBOARD.com. And finally, the American Sheep Industry Association at www.sheepusa.org. That's SHEEPUSA.org. Don't forget to follow Chairside Chats on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts.